TSMC denies that it has obtained U.S. permission to sell chips to Huawei.
Huawei is going to sell the Honor series to HTC. The reason given is that Huawei will focus on the mid to high-end mobile phone market.
National Internet Information Office will prohibit platforms compelling users to follow other accounts without user consent.
Corn futures prices increased by more than 40% this year. Goods in stock was snapped up.
After Huawei, the U.S. Department of Justice will reassess China Unicom's U.S. business.
Hu Xijin challenged Voice of America and questioned its influence in China.
The state-owned enterprises bankrupt gradually increased. Under the CCP system, these companies control the economy and monopolize resources, but the outcome is bankruptcy.
A weird celestial phenomenon of seawater intrusion appeared in Xiamen.
Heavy rain in Sanya, Hainan, October 18th. Sanya was affected by continuously heavy rainfall. There is a flooding. Sea-related tourism and recreational activities will be suspended.
A street vendor in Kunming, Yunnan often passes out due to an illness caused by a work injury. He puts up a sign on his stall asking people passing by to kindly wake him up if he's found unconscious. He asks not to call emergency to avoid bothering other people.
In Hunan, a woman died after going to a hospital for a bone fracture. Mr. Tao suffered from a great pain after the first surgery. She died during the second round of a medical treatment. The hospital wanted to cover up the evidence by destroying the corpse, but the family found out. They held the key and wanted to drive the ambulance away. I found her corpse in the ambulance. They said they'd take it to the crematorium. The police are investigating this incident.
The old Red Guards in Communist China are willing to be brainwashed. The Chinese Communist Party regime puts itself on life support by brainwashing the people in all aspects of their lives.
Between Apple and the Huawei products, the people voted with their actions. They chanted a patriotic slogan to buy Huawei products, but they bought Apple in action.
A city's resident presented the award of Best Crime Cover-Up to the court. Today is October 6, 2020. I come to Beijing's No. 2 Intermediate People's Court. I shall give them a pennant for covering up crimes. They judge cases without court hearings. The document of the court verdict doesn't even have the judges' names. They cover up for each other, tell nonsense, and give out illegal verdicts. This is the No. 2 Intermediate People's Court in Beijing. Look, illegal verdicts. They announce their verdicts without court hearings. The document of the verdict doesn't even bear the judges' names.
Zhao Lijian said the incident that CCP diplomat punched a Taiwanese diplomat is trivial. He said Taiwan made a false accusation. Global Network reposted an article by Taiwanese media that CCP's military aircraft kept harassing Taiwan. In the meanwhile, an American plane flew around the Bashir Channel. According to Global Network, the U.S. plans to ban developing countries from using Huawei product. The U.S. will provide loans and other sources of funding. The CCP only dares to conduct live-round exercises in the interior of Hainan area.
The CCP created a propaganda video threatening Taiwan, but it was all bluff and no action.
October 18, 2020, G Clubs, one of the services in the G series, officially went online. It is the beginning of the brand new way of consumption.
The number of total cases reported around the world is nearing 40 million. That's according to Johns Hopkins University, whose figures show more than 1.1 million people have died from the virus. The number of new cases worldwide rose on Friday by more than 400,000, the most since the start of the pandemic. Half of the new cases were in Europe, where there have been an average of 140,000 cases a day over the past week. France has had the highest daily average at more than 19,000, followed by the United Kingdom, Russia, Spain, and the Netherlands.
Senator, I want you to connect the dots for us in terms of national security risks. That's why you started this investigation in the first place, to check for any national security threats. Are there national security
remember,
issues?
everybody, can you imagine the national security threat, the threat of blackmail against a sitting president if these connections are true? Well, take whatever was alleged that was proven false against President Trump and multiply that by orders of magnitude of just what we've scratched the surface in terms of uncovering of this vast web of connections with Chinese nationals, ties to the Chinese Communist Party, the People's Liberation Army. I said that our report raised far more questions than it answered. This requires detailed investigations on the part of the Justice Department, on the part of the FBI, on the part of the media, and that's not occurring. So why is this being covered up? Why is this not being talked about? This is a major news story because if you have all these vast webs, all these connections, this could be used as blackmail against a potential Biden presidency far in excess of anything that was ever alleged against Donald Trump.
Twitter and Facebook censoring a New York Post report critical of Hunter Biden. The Senate is now calling for the CEOs of Twitter, Facebook, and Google to testify. Senator, thanks for being here with us. Let's start with this. What do you want to hear? What will you be asking these tech CEOs?
Well, they're going to be coming before us on October 28th. At Commerce Committee, we had actually subpoenaed them, unanimous vote from the committee, a couple of weeks ago, and now they've decided to appear voluntarily. So what we are looking at is Section 230 and the reforms that are going to be necessary for Section 230. Now, this deals with that liability protection shield that big tech has been hiding behind and censoring, using to censor conservatives, censor many of our entertainers. And this is one of the things that our legislation, the Online Freedom and Viewpoint Diversity Act, which Chairman Wicker and Chairman Graham have each joined me in this legislation. What we would do is turn that shield back into something that is transparent by saying, here is when you can use it, here is when you cannot use it, and being explicit in that. Also,
yes,
defining who's a content creator and moderator.
A chilling new report warning the U.S. about China's vow to take Americans hostage if the DOJ doesn't drop its prosecution of Chinese scientists. The Wall Street Journal reporting, quote, the Chinese message has been blunt. The U.S. should drop prosecutions of Chinese scholars in American courts, or Americans in China might find themselves in violation of Chinese law. What the U.S. is saying is that these scientists concealed from immigration authorities their active duty status with the People's Liberation Army. Therefore, we've detained them. Should we take seriously that China will do the same to Americans?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, this was so-called visa fraud. These are actually research scientists, as you indicated, associated with the People's Liberation Army, here to do what? To spy. They're here to conduct espionage. They got caught at it, and they've been arrested. China wants to retaliate. They've done this kind of retaliation with the Canadians right now. They got 2 of them arrested for a Chinese executive from Huawei who they have arrested. and they also have done it with the Australians and the Swedes. The difference is we're arresting spies. What China will likely do is detain Americans who have done nothing. Yes. They are not guilty of anything. So in that sense, it's not like the Cold War with the Soviet Union. We arrested their spies, they arrested ours, and we exchanged them at some point. So, yes, when you started out, Pete, and said they're hostages, that would be an appropriate description of what the Chinese intend to do.
Do you have early concerns about the fact that Hunter Biden might have forgotten to pick up water-damaged laptops from a repairman? And how did you satisfy yourself that this was what happened?
Here's how I satisfy myself. His lawyer, Mesries, from Chicago, one of the top lawyers in the country, emailed us and said, and we had the email. He called the repair shop. He sent us an email, or he sent the repair shop an email that he sent us right away saying, I got to get Hunter dropped these off. At the same day he talked about, he forgot to pick them up. I got to get them right away. What have you done with them? Right? That's an email. And a phone conversation he had at the repair shop. Everything about that's a lie. Okay? It's not like somebody's misreading. It's a lie. It's a lie. This repairman, when he didn't come back, it's abandoned property by law in Delaware if you don't come back in 90 days. He went to the FBI and gave them to the FBI. We got him much later. But the question for us is, why did the FBI not move on this immediately? When the FBI got it, two things would have happened. This was back in the fall or November, December of 2019. Number one, Donald Trump would have never been impeached. If you get the information out of his lab, there's no impeachment trial. And therefore, we could have focused on the Chinese Communist Party plague. We could have focused on the pandemic instead of worrying about the impeachment, number one. Number two, Bernie Sanders would have been the Democratic nominee if any of this information had come out. And by the way, there's much more horrible information. There's really horrible information that's about to come out. But if any of this information had come out at the time, Joe Biden had been finished in the Democratic primary, finished. So once again, the FBI has protected the neoliberal neocon candidate. They protected Hillary Clinton in 2016, and Bernie Sanders lost. They protected Joe Biden in 2020, and Bernie Sanders lost. So it just shows you the corruption of our institutions here in the United States. It doesn't matter who you change out. They're rotten to their core.
Fox is now off that. They said they have absolute verification for somebody in the email chain. Not only was the email real, right, not from Russia, it was real, but not just that, but that the equity ownership splits. When they talked about the big guy, he says, oh, yeah, that was Joe Biden, no doubt about it. So, Rudy, talk about how the Chinese Communist Party works and how these influence operations, the campaign last night came out at, late at night and said, hey, Joe Biden's been compromised. That's a word we've been using for a couple of weeks here. He's been compromised by the Chinese Communist Party. Put your U.S. attorney's hat on when you ran the Southern District of New York before it was a corrupt political operation, according to Barr, headhunting Trump's political allies, present company excluded, right? Talk to us about how deep is the Biden family compromised by the Chinese Communist Party?
They're owned by the Chinese Communist Party, Steve, and it's been quite a while. It's not new. Let me just add to the fact that it's verified. I did it myself. Now, Steve, I'm not an amateur at this. I put the about 200 mafia members in jail based on 4,000 hours of tape recordings. So I know how to do this. I also helped to establish the first FISA court, and I probably approved about 100 FISA wires myself. So I know what I'm doing. I have internally verified this about 3 different ways. And by the way, Hunter Biden verifies it. Before this ever appeared publicly, when there was a call from, I think it probably was the Post to the Biden family, immediately Hunter Biden's lawyer called the source and asked to have this hard drive back. So yes. Basically, that's an admission. The lawyer's an agent of
we've never released those emails. We've never released those emails we have, but we're holding those back of of Hunter Biden's lawyer reaching out in desperation to get it back. We held that back because we want to make sure they walk into the trap and then close it hard after.
They've done it. I mean, they've done it. I mean, they've done exactly what we thought they would do. You put a little out, they deny it, you prove it's untrue, and now this time we got them about. Well, if I was trying the case for false exculpatory statements, let me give you an idea of what they're going to be walking through. There are still about 18,000 texts and emails to go, and 24,826 photographs. I'm not going to say they're all incriminating, but there are plenty of them. For example, that whole situation with the 10%, you don't even need a witness to verify it, because what they don't know is following that email, about 3 later is an email in which they give out the keys to the new Chinese office. The first key is given out to Joe Biden. The second key is given out to Jill Biden. Now, what are they doing with offices in a business that's half owned with their son, their brother, their sister-in-law? What are they doing in that office if they don't have an interest in it? Let's make sure, the memo says, that Joe and Jill get the first keys. And then it says 10% for the big guy. I don't know. If I were trying that case, I put those two things together. I think a jury comes to the conclusion it's Joe Biden. And if there's an eyewitness, if there's a witness, well, then I don't know, about time to plead guilty, I think. The fact is, he's asking to be president of the United States. And he was a partner as recently as a year ago with the Chinese Communist government of China. And his family has gotten, I can count, about $30 million in the last 4 years from the Chinese Communist government. His son was in partnership with
the $30 million, but that also tees up a partnership that could be hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars. That partnership and the equity splits means a much bigger participation.
Oh, without any doubt about it. I mean, there are Ukrainian prosecutors who our embassy is not allowing to come to the United States, who are willing to testify that Biden has offshore accounts. And they have not been able to get the cooperation of the United States government to discover those offshore accounts. There are 5 other witnesses in Ukraine that our embassy, present embassy, is refusing to give a visa to, who will testify that Biden was bribed by Mykola Zlochevsky, offered upwards of $20 million, paid through his son, in order to fix Zlochevsky's case, to get him out of trouble in Ukraine. So what Hunter Biden really is a bag man.
报了革命这碗酒，敬天，敬地，敬战友，新中国联邦人永不为奴，跟我走。神仙养蛊现大仙，咱走走看。
More than 40 million people have contracted the CCP-Virus. The global death toll stood Monday at more than 1.1 million. A curfew in Paris and 8 other cities affecting about 22 million people will come into effect on October 17th and last at least 4 weeks. The Spanish government imposed a 15-day state of emergency in Madrid and the surrounding areas, which started on Friday. Italy has made it mandatory to wear face masks in outdoor spaces across the country in an attempt to contain the spread of the virus. Poland to convert stadium into its first coronavirus field hospital. Malaysia reported 871 new coronavirus cases on Sunday, the highest number in a single day since the outbreak began. Experts say the next 6 to 12 weeks are going to be the darkest of the entire pandemic. Cathay Pacific reports 83% drop in passengers in first 9 months of the year.
Dear mama, are you okay over there? Your son is crying and missing you, and sees you in his dreams. You sent take down the CCP, cause it's God's will, it's God's will. So I'll wait for you, and I'll see you when we end the CCP, yeah. So